Welcome back, everyone, to AI for the People. Today, we're doing a deep dive into something I think you'll find pretty fascinating. It's the intersection of artificial intelligence and the justice system.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things you see in the headlines. AI in the courts. But what does that even mean?
Right, right. And like when I hear that, I sort of picture a robot judge banging a gavel. But I'm guessing it's a little more complicated than that.
Yeah, for sure. We're not quite at the robot judge stage yet, thankfully. But it is a debate that's heating up. And I think a good place to start is with this question. Like, imagine a world where algorithms are playing a major role in legal decisions. Would that be faster? Probably. But would it be fairer? I mean, that's the question, right?
Yeah, that's the big question. I was reading this article the other day, I think you sent it to me actually, about how AI is being used to predict recidivism, like
Yeah.
how likely a criminal is to reoffend.
Yeah, I remember sending that one.
And some of the results are pretty amazing. I think there's a study in California that found an AI tool could predict reoffending with like 75% accuracy.
Wow, yeah. 75%. That's way higher than traditional methods.
It's huge, right? Like if AI can help us identify who's more likely to reoffend, that could change everything.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about parole decisions or sentencing guidelines, even just risk assessment for bail.
So it sounds like there's a real potential for AI to make the justice system more efficient, maybe even prevent future crimes.
For sure, the potential is there. But of course, like with everything AI, there are concerns, big ones. One of the biggest is transparency.
Right, I've heard about this, the whole black box problem.
Exactly. With some of these AI models, we don't really know how they're reaching their decisions. It's like this opaque process. So how do you appeal a decision when you don't even understand the logic behind it?
That's a good point. It's like, how can you trust a system if you don't know how it works?
It's a tough one, and this lack of transparency is a major obstacle to AI adoption in the legal world because it really does undermine those core principles of fairness and due process that are so essential to our justice system.
It almost feels like there's this fundamental tension, right, between the efficiency AI promises and the principles of justice that we expect.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Efficiency versus fairness. And this tension is at the heart of the entire AI and law debate. You know, people who are really pro AI in law, they tend to focus on this potential for consistency. They argue that AI can analyze massive data sets, look for patterns, and make judgments based on those patterns.
So it's like taking the human element, the human error, out of the equation.
That's the idea. Minimizing bias, ensuring that everyone is treated equally under the law. At least that's the hope.
So in a way, AI could actually make the justice system more equitable.
Some experts think so. There's this quote I came across from Professor Alan Turing. He's a big name in AI ethics, and he argues that removing the human element could actually lead to a more equitable system. He says, and I'm paraphrasing here, that AI could eliminate those personal biases that we all have, you know, the ones that sometimes unconsciously influence our decisions.
That's a really interesting point. So Turing is saying that human judges, even with the best intentions, might still be bringing their own biases to the table.
Exactly. But AI, in theory at least, could be free of those biases, and that could result in a fairer system overall.
I see what he's saying. But, it makes me wonder, even if we program AI to be neutral, what about the data it's trained on? What if the data itself is biased, reflecting, existing societal prejudices?
That is the million-dollar question, and it's a huge concern for researchers. Because if the data is biased, the AI will be biased too. It could actually end up amplifying those biases, leading to even more unjust outcomes.
So we're back to that transparency issue again, right?
Right.
We need to understand what data these AI systems are using and how that data might be shaping their decisions.
Absolutely. Transparency is key. We need to be able to audit these systems, understand how they're working, and make sure they're not perpetuating harmful biases.
I guess what it comes down to is we can't just blindly trust that AI will automatically be a force for good in the justice system.
Right. AI is a tool. A powerful tool. But like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
It all comes down to how we choose to use it, how we design it, how we implement it, and how we oversee it.
Exactly. And how we ensure that it's being used in a way that aligns with our values of fairness, equality, and justice.
So are there places like in the real world where AI is already being used in the legal system? Not the robot judge scenario, but actual real-world applications.
Yeah, there are a few examples. The Netherlands, for instance, they've been using an AI tool to help with parole decisions. And early data suggests that it's actually linked to a decrease in reoffending rates.
So it's actually working, like it's helping people get back on their feet and stay out of trouble.
The initial results are promising. And it kind of opens up this whole other side of the debate, right? Like, can AI be used not just to punish, but to actually help with rehabilitation?
I mean, it's a really interesting question. If AI can help us understand what factors contribute to recidivism, maybe we can use that knowledge to develop better rehabilitation programs.
Absolutely. And that's where it gets really fascinating. Can AI, despite its limitations, actually play a role in creating a justice system that's more focused on rehabilitation, on second chances,
Yeah.
on actually helping people turn their lives around?
I mean, that would be amazing. But of course, we have to balance that with all the ethical concerns we've been talking about.
Of course, we can't just ignore the potential downsides, the risk of bias, the lack of transparency.
So it sounds like there's a lot to unpack here. We've got this potential for increased efficiency and consistency,
Yeah.
but we also have these serious concerns about transparency, about bias. And then there's that fundamental question. Can AI ever really understand the complexities of human behavior?
Yeah, you've summarized it perfectly. And honestly, we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore here, especially when it comes to the ethical side of things and how AI might impact our fundamental rights.
That's actually what I was hoping we could delve into next. So for everyone listening, we're going to shift gears a bit now and take a look at some real-world examples of how AI is actually being used in the legal system today. We'll look at some case studies. We'll talk to some experts who are working on these issues.
And we want to hear from you too. What do you think about all of this? Is there a place for AI in the justice system? What are your hopes? What are your fears?
Yeah, jump into the conversation online. Use the hashtag #AILawJustice. Let us know what you think.
And you can find us, AI for the People, on all the major podcast platforms and social media.
We're your go-to source for all things AI. So make sure you subscribe and stay tuned, because in the next part of this deep dive, we're going to get into some real-world case studies. We're going to examine some of the potential consequences of integrating AI into our legal systems.
It's going to be fascinating.
It really is. So stick around, folks. We'll be right back after a short break.
See you soon. Welcome back to the deep dive. So before the break, we were talking about, the potential benefits and the drawbacks of AI in judicial decision-making.
Right.
So let's kind of zoom in a little bit and look at how this technology is actually being used in legal settings today.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. When most people think about AI in the courtroom, I think they picture, like, a robot judge,
Yeah.
presiding over a trial.
But I know, right?
But I'm guessing the reality is a lot more nuanced than that.
It is. It is. Yeah, we're not quite at the robot judge stage yet, thankfully. But AI is being used in a lot of different ways to assist legal professionals.
Oh, okay, so it's more about assisting than replacing.
Yeah, for now at least. So for example, think about legal research. I mean, lawyers spend countless hours poring over case law.
Oh, yeah.
Tons and tons of documents.
But now there are these AI-powered research tools that can sift through all those documents in a fraction of the time.
Yeah, they can analyze all that legal text, find relevant precedents, pull out key information. It's pretty incredible.
So that's a huge time saver for lawyers.
Oh, absolutely. It frees them up to focus on, the more strategic aspects of a case. But it's not just legal research. AI is also being used for things like document review, risk assessment, even predicting case outcomes.
Predicting case outcomes.
Yeah, it's pretty cutting edge stuff. But again, there are definitely ethical concerns that come along with it.
Right. We were talking about some of those before the break.
So one area where AI is being used, and this is one that's particularly controversial, is risk assessment.
Okay. Tell me more about that.
So this is often used in things like bail decisions or parole decisions.
Right.
So these tools, they use AI to analyze data about a defendant. Things like their criminal history, their employment status, social connections, all that stuff.
You try to predict how likely they are to, reoffend?
Yeah, or skip bail. Basically, it's trying to assess how much of a risk they pose to the community.
And this is supposed to help judges make more informed decisions.
That's the idea. But the problem is, and this is a big problem, these tools could actually end up reinforcing existing biases in the criminal justice system.
How so?
Well, think about it. if the data that these tools are trained on reflects historical inequalities, then the AI might end up recommending harsher outcomes for certain groups of people, even if those individuals don't actually pose a higher risk.
Right, because the AI is just reflecting the biases that are already baked into the data.
Exactly. And that brings us back to that whole issue of transparency. If we can't see how these tools are making their decisions, how do we know they're not unfairly discriminating against certain groups?
Yeah, it's that black box problem again. It's hard to trust a system when you don't know what's going on under the hood.
Exactly. So transparency is super important, not just from an ethical standpoint, but also for building public trust in these systems.
Right, because if people don't trust these tools, they're not going to accept their use in legal proceedings.
It just won't work.
So are there ways to make these systems more transparent? Like, are people working on that?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of research going on right now in the field of what's called explainable AI.
Explainable AI, okay.
Yeah, so it's basically trying to develop AI systems that can explain their reasoning in a way that humans can understand.
So we can actually see why the AI reached a particular conclusion.
Exactly. And that's a really important step towards building more transparent and trustworthy AI systems.
Sounds like a good start. But even if we can make these systems more transparent, it still kind of raises that bigger question, right?
Mm.
Like, should AI be making these kinds of decisions in the first place? There's something about judgment that feels very human to me. Like, can an algorithm ever really replicate that?
Yeah, that's the deep philosophical question, isn't it?
Right.
And it's one that philosophers and legal scholars have been debating for centuries.
Mm.
Some people argue that human judgment is essential because it involves things like empathy, compassion, the ability to weigh these complex ethical considerations.
Qualities that are, at least for now, pretty difficult to program into an algorithm.
Yeah, I mean, how do you teach a machine to understand the nuances of human behavior, the complexities of a particular situation?
Right, right. It's not just about data points. It's about understanding the human context.
Exactly. And even if we could program those qualities into an AI, would it be ethical to do so?
I mean, that's a whole other can of worms, right? Like, are there certain decisions that should always be made by a human, no matter how efficient or accurate an AI might be?
It's a tough one. There's no easy answer, but it's a conversation that we need to be having. We need to weigh the potential benefits of AI against the potential risks.
Right. And we need to involve the public in this discussion. This isn't just something for, tech companies or legal experts to decide.
Absolutely. This is something that affects all of us. So we need to be having these conversations out in the open. We need to be thinking critically about the role we want AI to play in our lives, especially in something as fundamental as justice.
I totally agree. And it's encouraging to see that people are starting to pay attention to this issue.
Oh, yeah.
We mentioned that hashtag AI Law Justice earlier. And there are a lot of organizations and advocacy groups that are working to raise awareness about the ethical implications of AI in the legal system.
Yeah, which is great, because this isn't just a technological issue, it's a social and political issue.
It really is. And the decisions we make about AI today are going to have a huge impact on the future of our society. So, as we're thinking about the future of AI in the justice system, what are some of the key things that we need to keep in mind?
I think transparency has got to be at the top of the list. We need to make sure that these systems are accountable, that their decision-making processes are open to scrutiny.
Right. We've got to be able to see what's going on.
And we have to be super vigilant about the potential for bias. We can't just let these tools perpetuate existing inequalities.
And we need to keep having these conversations about the values we want to uphold in our justice system.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what role do we want AI to play? What are the limits of its use? Those are questions that we need to answer collectively as a society.
So I think one of the big takeaways from this deep dive is that this conversation is far from over.
Oh, it's just getting started. And as AI continues to evolve, the questions we're grappling with today are only going to become more complex and more urgent.
That's a little bit daunting, but also exciting in a way.
It is. It is. And this is where you, our listeners, come in. We want to hear from you.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on all of this? Do you think AI has a place in the justice system? What are your hopes? What are your fears?
Jump into the conversation online. You can use that hashtag again, hashtag AI Law Justice, or connect with us on social media.
Your voice matters.
It really does. And if you want to stay up to date on all this stuff, on all the latest developments in the world of AI, make sure you subscribe to AI for the People.
We're your go-to source for all things AI. We try to be balanced. We try to be insightful. We try to make this stuff accessible to everyone.
Because it's important. This technology is changing the world, and we all need to be part of the conversation.
We've been talking a lot about the potential for AI to, revolutionize the justice system,
Hmm.
speed things up, maybe even help with some of those really tough decisions like bail and parole. But as we wrap up this deep dive, I kind of want to look even further down the road, like what happens next? What are some of the broader implications for the future of justice if AI starts playing a bigger role?
Well, that's a big question. And I think it's important to remember that technology never exists in a vacuum, right?
Right.
It's shaped by the societies that create it, by the values that those societies prioritize.
So when we're talking about AI in the justice system, we're really talking about what kind of justice system we want to have.
Exactly. If we value efficiency above all else, then we might be tempted to just hand over more and more decision-making power to algorithms.
Hmm.
But if we prioritize fairness, transparency, the right to due process, then we need to be much more cautious about how we integrate AI into the legal system.
And I guess that brings us back to this idea of public engagement. This isn't something that should be decided by tech companies or legal experts alone.
No, absolutely not. I mean, we all have a stake in this. We need to be having these open and honest conversations about, the role we want AI to play in our lives,
Right.
especially when it comes to something as fundamental as justice.
Right, right. It's like, do we want AI to be a tool that helps us create a more just society? Or do we run the risk of creating a system where algorithms are just reinforcing existing inequalities?
Exactly, and eroding our fundamental rights in the process.
It's heavy stuff, but it's something we have to think about.
Absolutely. And it's not just about making sure that the technology itself is, free from bias. It's also about making sure that the humans who are designing these systems, the people who are implementing them, that they're aware of their own biases and are working to mitigate those biases.
Oh, that's a really good point. We can't just assume that AI is going to, magically fix all the problems in the justice system.
Right. And in fact, if we're not careful, it could actually make things worse.
We need to approach this technology with a healthy dose of skepticism, I guess.
Yeah, we need to be critical. We need to constantly be questioning the assumptions that are baked into these systems and evaluating their impact, on real people's lives.
You said something earlier that's really sticking with me. You said that technology is never neutral.
Right.
It reflects the values and priorities of the people who create it. So if we want AI to help create a more just and equitable society, we need to be really intentional about the values that we embed in these systems.
100%. And I think it's a good reminder that technology is not destiny. We have the power to shape its development,
Yeah.
to ensure that it serves humanity,
Yeah.
not the other way around.
Well said. And I think that's a great note to end on. The future of AI in the justice system is still being written. And it's up to all of us to be a part of shaping that future.
And if this deep dive has, sparked your curiosity or raised any concerns, that's a good thing. Keep exploring these issues. Engage in those conversations about how AI can be used responsibly and ethically.
And if you want to dive deeper into the world of AI and all the ways it's impacting our lives, make sure you follow AI for the People.
You can find us on all the major podcast platforms and, all the social media channels.
So join the conversation. Help us navigate the future of AI together. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.